Steel and Courage, Hulon Brooke Whittington's Heroism in World War II. Welcome to Beyond the Call, where history, leadership, and heroism come alive. I am your host, and today we bring you the remarkable story of Sergeant Hulon Brooke Whittington, a Medal of Honor recipient whose courage in the fields of Normandy during World War II stands as a testament to decisive leadership under fire. Trackpads.com is proud to present this episode as part of our continuing effort to preserve and share the stories of extraordinary service members whose actions shaped history. In the dark hours of July 29, 1944, near the French village of Grimesnil, Sergeant Hulon Brooke Whittington would etch his name into the annals of military history. A native of Bogalusa, Louisiana, and a battle-hardened squad leader in the 41st Armored Infantry Regiment of the 2nd Armored Division, Whittington found himself in command of his platoon at a moment when chaos reigned. His platoon leader and sergeant were missing, the enemy was advancing with overwhelming armored strength, and the fate of his sector depended on decisive leadership. That night, Whittington demonstrated the blend of resolve, tactical acumen, and sheer audacity that defines the highest traditions of the United States Army. Under withering fire and against the steel-clad menace of German panzers, he rallied his men, reorganized their defenses, and launched actions that would halt a determined enemy column. His command presence was not born of rank, but of necessity, and his ability to inspire under those conditions would turn the tide of the fight. For his actions in the fields and hedgerows of Normandy, Whittington was awarded the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest military decoration. His story is one of a soldier who rose to meet the moment, shaping the outcome of a battle through fearless initiative and unbreakable will. It is a legacy of courage under fire, carved into history not only by what he did, but by the lives he saved in doing it. By late July 1944, the Allied campaign in Normandy had shifted from a grinding battle of attrition to a high-stakes push for breakout. Operation Cobra, launched on July 25th, aimed to shatter German defensive lines and open the road into Brittany and beyond. The German 7th Army, battered by weeks of relentless aerial bombardment, naval gunfire, and infantry assaults, struggled to maintain cohesion. Yet in the Bocage country, the dense hedgerow-laced terrain of Normandy, the fighting was still deadly close and tactically complex. The 2nd Armored Division, nicknamed Hell on Wheels, played a pivotal role in this breakout. Equipped with M4 Sherman tanks, half-tracks, and armored infantry, the division was designed for mobile warfare but found itself locked in battles where every hedgerow could hide a German machine gun or anti-tank weapon. Supporting Operation Cobra Advance, the division's 41st Armored Infantry Regiment provided the critical infantry punch to secure villages, clear resistance pockets, and guard against counterattacks aimed at halting Allied momentum. The German forces in this sector were no ordinary opponents. Elements of the elite Panzer Division and other experienced Wehrmacht and Waffen-S units fought with tenacity, often launching armored counterattacks to exploit weaknesses in Allied lines. Their arsenal included the formidable Mark V Panther and Mark IV tanks, supported by self-propelled guns, mortars, and a well-practiced doctrine of combined arms warfare. For Allied infantry, facing these armored thrusts meant holding ground long enough for their own armor or artillery to respond, a task that demanded both courage and precise coordination. The countryside around Grimesnil presented its own set of challenges. Narrow lanes flanked by thick hedgerows, limited visibility and maneuver space favoring the defenders. Fields were often studded with minefields, forcing attackers into predictable paths. For the men of Whittington's platoon, this environment meant that every movement was potentially under observation, and any defensive position could be outflanked if not anchored securely. Communication was often limited to runners or short bursts over radios, making on-the-spot leadership crucial. It was within this tactical and strategic crucible that Sergeant Hulon Brooke Whittington's moment came. When his superiors went missing during an intense German assault, he had to step into a vacuum of command, making life-or-mathy decisions under extreme pressure. His actions would not only repel a determined enemy thrust, but also contribute to the larger Allied drive that was beginning to unravel German resistance in Normandy. personal background, and Medal of Honor citation. Hulon Brooke Whittington was born on July 9, 1921, in the small Louisiana city of Bogalusa, a community known for its sawmills, hardworking families, and deep sense of Southern resilience. Growing up during the Great Depression, Whittington learned early the values of persistence, self-reliance, and responsibility, traits that would serve him well in war. He attended local schools and, like many young men of his generation, took on jobs that required discipline and physical endurance, shaping his ability to work under demanding conditions. When the United States entered World War II after the attack on Pearl Harbor, Whittington answered the call to service. He enlisted in the United States Army at Bastrop, Louisiana, in August of 1940, months before America officially entered the war, placing him among the early cadre of soldiers who would form the backbone of the rapidly expanding Army. Assigned to the 41st Armored Infantry Regiment of the famed 2nd Armored Division, Whittington trained extensively in armored infantry tactics, mastering the integration of infantry maneuver with tank and artillery support. Training at United States bases like Fort Benning and in large-scale maneuvers prepared him for the realities of modern mechanized warfare. The 2nd Armored Division's reputation for aggressive mobile operations meant that every soldier had to be ready to fight in fluid, fast-moving conditions. Whittington's early service saw him participate in pre-invasion preparations in England, where the division drilled relentlessly for the eventual cross-channel assault. By the summer of 1944, Whittington had seen combat in the initial campaigns following D-Day, fighting through the maze-like bocage country that tested both nerves and endurance. He had earned a reputation among his peers as calm under fire, quick-thinking, and unafraid to take initiative, qualities that would soon elevate him from squad leader to acting platoon commander in the heat of battle. After the war, Whittington continued his service, eventually retiring from the Army as a major in 1960, after 2 decades in uniform. He settled in Jacksonville, Florida, where he remained active in veterans circles, and maintained strong ties to the military community. Hulon Brooke Whittington passed away on January 9, 1969, at the age of 47, leaving behind a legacy of valor that endures in the history of the 2nd Armored Division and the annals of the Medal of Honor. Medal of Honor citation. He was in command of a platoon of armored infantry on July 29, 1944, near Grimesnil, France, when the enemy launched a counterattack of armor and infantry, supported by fire from artillery, mortars, and rocket launchers. When the platoon leader and platoon sergeant became casualties, Sergeant Whittington, without hesitation, assumed command. Seeing that the left flank of his platoon had been exposed by the withdrawal of another unit, he secured it by repositioning his men and weapons. He moved among his men with complete disregard for his own safety, reorganizing the defense, directing fire, and encouraging them. Then, mounting a tank, he directed its fire and that of other tanks, and personally fired the tank's machine gun into the advancing Germans. When the enemy was within 75 yards, Sergeant Whittington led a counterattack, personally killing several of the enemy, capturing 1 German officer and 13 enlisted men, and forcing the remainder to withdraw. The outstanding leadership, initiative, and gallantry displayed by Sergeant Whittington were in keeping with the highest traditions of the military service, where valor was forged. What follows is a blend of recorded history and dramatized combat detail, intended to bring Sergeant Hulon Brooke Whittington's actions to life as though viewed through the eyes of those who fought beside him. The events remain anchored to the historical record, but the pacing, environmental texture, and battlefield dialogue are rendered here to immerse the listener in the moment. The July night air in Normandy was thick with the smell of churned earth, exhaust, and cordite. Just beyond the village of Grimesnil, the 43rd Armored Infantry Regiment held a precarious line. The deep-set hedgerows created walls of tangled green, concealing both friend and foe until the moment of contact. Whittington's platoon had been in position for hours, weapons trained on the narrow lanes ahead, when the first rumble of enemy armor echoed through the stillness. It was low at first, almost a growl beneath the earth, but growing louder with every second. The unmistakable sound of German panzers advancing. Within minutes, German artillery began to walk its fire across the American positions. The sky flashed with the stuttering light of incoming shells, each concussion sending showers of dirt and splintered wood into the air. Mortar rounds whistled down in irregular intervals, some finding the mark in the hedgerow lanes, others striking blind. Through the chaos, reports came in. The platoon leader was down, badly wounded, and the platoon sergeant had been evacuated after a direct hit near his position. The chain of command had been shattered, and the enemy was closing fast. Whittington did not hesitate. He sprinted through the ditch line, bullets snapping overhead, calling to his men by name as he pulled them into a tighter defensive arc. His voice cut through the barrage, not a shout of desperation, but of control. Shift your fire to the left. Keep those machine guns raking the lane. His situational awareness was immediate. The withdrawal of an adjacent unit had left their left flank dangerously exposed, a gap the Germans could exploit to roll up the entire position. As the sound of tank engines grew closer, Whittington dashed to an M4 Sherman positioned behind the line. Clambering onto the turret, he dropped into the commander's hatch, ordered the gunner onto target, and began directing fire with precision. The 75mm main gun thundered, sending armor-piercing rounds down the lane into the lead German vehicle. When the coaxial machine gun jammed, Whittington swung onto the pintle-mounted .50 caliber and opened up, the heavy weapon spitting long bursts that tore into the advancing infantry. The enemy pressed on, their own tracers slicing through the night, ripping branches from the hedgerows and kicking up fountains of dirt. One German tank lurched forward, only to be crippled by a direct hit from the Sherman's main gun. Flames licked skyward from its engine compartment, casting a flickering orange light over the battlefield. Whittington kept moving, off the tank, back among his men, checking positions, redistributing ammunition. "Hold what you've got," he ordered. "We're not giving up an inch." By now the Germans were within 100 yards, their shouted orders and the grinding of tracks audible even over the gunfire. Whittington knew the next minutes would decide the fight. He ordered his men to fix bayonets and prepare for a counterattack, a maneuver that would take the fight to the enemy before they could consolidate. The hedgerow line erupted again in gunfire, tracers arcing into the darkness as Whittington prepared to lead from the front. Whittington vaulted the hedgerow, his M1 carbine braced tight, boots sinking into the soft earth of the lane. His men followed in a tight wave, rifles and Thompson submachine guns leveled, their shouts merging with the hammering gunfire. The counterattack was sudden and violent, catching the German infantry mid-advance. A burst from Whittington's carbine dropped one soldier in the lead, then another. The platoon surged forward in a coordinated rush, grenades arcing over the lane to detonate among enemy positions, sending shards of metal and earth into the night air. From the shadows, a German officer stumbled backward, pistol raised. Whittington closed the gap in seconds, disarming him with a shove and driving him toward the American line at gunpoint. "Get him back. Secure him," he barked to a nearby corporal. The capture, along with a group of stunned enlisted men nearby, momentarily fractured the cohesion of the German assault. Panic rippled through the enemy ranks as their momentum faltered under the sudden American push. In the midst of the chaos, the Sherman Whittington had commanded earlier shifted into position, its turret slewing to engage a second German tank edging into the lane. A thunderous shot from the main gun struck home, immobilizing the vehicle and sending its crew scrambling for cover. Whittington seized the moment, rallying his men into a tighter wedge formation and pressing forward another 50 yards, clearing the lane and forcing the surviving enemy soldiers into a full retreat toward the far hedgerows. The fight left the air heavy with the acrid tang of burned powder and the metallic scent of ruptured steel. Crickets, silenced for the duration of the battle, began their hesitant chirping again as the fields fell quiet except for the crackle of burning wreckage. Whittington's platoon regrouped along the newly secured line, checking weapons, tending to the wounded, and gathering prisoners. The cost had been real, but their sector was intact, and the German thrust blunted. As dawn crept over the hedgerows, the results of the night's fight were plain. Multiple enemy vehicles destroyed or disabled, more than a dozen prisoners in custody, and a dangerous breach in the line decisively sealed. Whittington had turned what could have been a collapse into a hard-won defensive victory. His leadership in those hours had been more than a matter of orders. It had been the visible, fearless presence of a man who refused to yield ground. Reflections and Lessons Learned closing. Hulon Brooke Whittington's stand near Grimesnil offers enduring lessons on battlefield leadership. In the face of sudden chaos, his first instinct was to take decisive control, not through hesitation or committee, but through immediate action that stabilized his men and restored coherence to the defense. In modern leadership terms, this was a masterclass in situational awareness and rapid decision-making under extreme pressure. His actions also underscore the importance of initiative. The absence of senior leaders could have led to paralysis, yet Whittington not only maintained the defense but transitioned into an aggressive counterattack at the critical moment. In both military and civilian spheres, initiative remains a defining trait of effective leadership, particularly when plans collapse and conditions change without warning. Finally, Whittington's conduct reflects the moral courage to place himself at the decisive point of action, where risk was highest but impact was greatest. This willingness to expose himself for the benefit of those under his command reinforced trust, galvanized morale, and delivered results. The lesson is timeless. Leadership is as much about presence and example as it is about strategy and orders. Sergeant Hulon Brooke Whittington's valor on the night of July 29, 1944, was more than a single act of heroism. It was a sustained demonstration of leadership, resolve, and skill under the most dangerous conditions. In the hedgerows of Normandy, his actions preserved a vital position, saved lives, and contributed directly to the momentum of the Allied advance. His story stands as a reminder that history is often shaped by individuals who refuse to yield, who meet moments of crisis with clarity and courage. Whittington's name, etched among the ranks of Medal of Honor recipients, carries with it the weight of that night's fierce combat and the enduring example he set for future generations. His legacy continues to inspire, urging us to remember not just the victories, but the human grit that made them possible.